The importance of the United Nations is enumerated in its mandate, and its promise is coming to fruition nearly 40 after its creation. If you have any doubt about the importance of the United Nations, consider this. As stated in its charter drafted in 1941 and made effective in 1945, the United Nations was created to replace its forebearer, the League of Nations, a noble yet weaker body than its UN successor, and to establish and maintain peace and aim for greater cooperation between nations on issues ranging from the economy, societal, and humanitarian needs, which now also includes the mandate for climate change. The UN didn't require the unanimity that the League of Nations did, and the UN gave every nation more power to be heard at the international level. And the UN has its own military, which has been used to some great effect, as well as some bad ones. And yes, while the United Nations can be a messy, ineffectual government body at times, like any nations themselves, and it does make mistakes, but on the whole, it does make the world a better place. It increases cooperation amongst nations, and may well be the most important institution man has ever made. It's most recently exemplified its necessity on its first mandate, and with surprising results. Most of the world isn't falling under the sway of any one power, such as America, or Russia, or China, or any power for that matter. Instead, something entirely different happened, and this should be applauded. Something amazing at the General Assembly vote of the United Nations Friday, 27 October 2023, an act for which we have yet to understand or truly comprehend its ramifications, and how much of a profound shift this will require of many nations and individuals. This wondrous act has birthed the world a new voice, the voice of a shared humanity. And the vote? The immediate, durable humanitarian truce in the Israeli-Gaza-Hamas war. And why was this so monumental, so consequential? Firstly, instead of just promoting the needs and rights of one group over another in a conflict, the United Nations took an unprecedented step that stood for universal human rights for everyone, for everybody, for all time. Secondly, these votes were in opposition to the votes of the United States and Israel, the strongest superpower and one of its strongest allies, due to the total lack of regard for measured, reasoned proportionality and for indiscriminate killing of non-combatant families, civilians, and denying sustenance and basic human necessities for survival. None of which are in Israel's best long-term and strategic interests. For Israel's actions weren't reasoned acts, but the acts of a mother in mourning for her children, lashing out at the easiest and most damaging way that it could. As America itself has, with the war on terror, the war on drugs, and American actions in Afghanistan, Iraq, and all the countless forays and mishaps of meddling in the affairs and upending the sovereignty of countless tribes in Africa and the Americas, in nations such as Mexico, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Philippines, Guam, and most, if not all, of Central and South America. Well, most of the world, really. The moment when America took the mantle from ancient Rome, from the Vatican, and from countless kings and queens of Europe before it, like the British before them, America bought into racism, which, in their eyes, justified land encroachment, slavery, and genocide of peoples in places like the bombing of Hiroshima, and the countless dead in Vietnam and Cambodia, to name a few. And with it, as well as America's original sins, America could embrace manifest destiny, and the destiny of manifest has no bounds. The days to force bondage and servitude on anyone is over. A new beginning promised in a sun yet to rise. The rays shone on our face yet to shine. But their promise can warm our hearts and minds as we wait for the future, as we build the future, a future for all of humanity. For on this day, Friday, 27 October 2023, the General Assembly of the United Nations voted for the civilian rights of both Palestinians and Israelis alike. And shame on Israeli ambassador to the UN, Gilad Erdan, for saying otherwise and for his questioning of the UN's legitimacy or relevance because the United Nations voted in opposition to the vote of Israel. Israel's propagation and conflagration against the Palestinians of Gaza will prove a heavy burden with a heavy cost and a long road with much soul-searching on the journey towards reconciliation and forgiveness. We certainly don't want Israel or any country to start or lead its actions to World War III. A war with no winners, not even those who profit from war. Like climate change, some wars can't easily be stopped and can easily lead to annihilation unless diplomacy and the big picture of what we and every other species on this earth demand for basic survival. This could be the end of us. We have a choice to do the right thing. We need to stand with the rest of humanity, not in opposition to them. Comments like Gilad Erdan are why every nation needs to check the lesser virtues for humanity and constrain the actions of any belligerent nation committing acts against humanity. And we all need to ascend to the higher virtues to guarantee freedom, safety, comfort, and equality for everyone, of every nation, in perpetuity. There is no room for greed, racism, discrimination, war, or inhumanity, or inequality in the 21st century. And by combating the worst effects of climate change, we can leave the world not much worse than we found it, but a lot better than it could have been if we didn't take immediate action, like right now. The third reason this vote was so meaningful: not only did a majority of nations vote in opposition to what America claimed to be in its own interest, which, in all honesty, America's own vote wasn't in America's long-term and strategic interests. Even U.S. envoy Linda Thomas-Greenfield alluded to that fact when she acknowledged that nations only have stability when everyone has stability. Even if we weren't 99.9% the same and all related, which we are, we're all too interconnected to not care about what happens anywhere else on the globe. The world rules and governs effectively only when the world is in agreement. This might be the first time in human history that the world, in unison, not only voted for universal human rights for everyone, but through their own justified chastisement told the rest of the world, like America, like Israel, how the world is going to behave from now on. Everyone's voice is going to be listened to, and everyone gets a seat at the table. And we need to dismantle the UN Security Council and call it out for what it is: a late-stage capitalist and Cold War relic that should have been tossed and tumbled in the trash bin and rubbish heap of history long ago. It is unjust, unequal, and discriminatory, and it symbolizes a world order that doesn't exist anymore. Equality demands the end of the discriminatory and ineffectual Security Council. The vote also demonstrated how out of step and unpredictable American government and American policy both foreign and domestic, can be. America can't even govern itself. 2 out of 3 branches of government are ungovernable. The Supreme Court is bought by billionaires and corporations and readily accepts greed and bribery and corruption amongst the justices themselves. And the legislative branch is barely functioning because a lot of people are being lied to about what is really going on in America. Because a few billionaires who own the media, including social media and newspapers and radios and cable networks and streaming services and television stations, are only telling us what they want us to hear by creating false narratives as a bread of circuses against the real issues and ills spawning and growing like a virus or cancer in this country. Enough to take down democracy in America if we let it. When people vote a party in power in America who doesn't support democracy, can we really expect any different results than what we have now? The rich are trying to limit our rights. They are making everything more expensive and trying to limit the few services the government guarantees us to keep us afloat. And they're buying politicians to tilt things more in their favor every day. More in their favor and against ours. The odds certainly aren't in our favor. But to put it simply, billionaires and corporations are purposely conducting the largest transfer of wealth in world history. From the majority, the 99% of us, to them, the 1%. They are attacking on multiple simultaneous fronts. We give tax breaks to the richest of the rich, and give them subsidies to run their corporations, and let the 1% and their corporations pay a lower effective tax rate than what you pay. A lot less than what you pay, percentage-wise. Because this works to the interests of many of the politicians often being rich themselves, politicians who take unlimited amounts of money from corporations, and the 1% is campaign contributions. And what do the rich demand of these politicians for their favor? For their patronage. That, and the decline and fall of the Republican Party, a topic for another video, coming soon. In the meantime, watch my videos on Americans Don't Like to Talk About Money, the top 10 issues in America today, and my video on the brink, how close are we to World War III? This UN vote also came with a majority consensus and without the influence or the manipulations and protestations of other superpowers. I hope, I pray, for our sakes and the sakes of everyone, and for a just end to war and a real beginning to equality, to respect, to peace and prosperity, for safe streets, clean air, clean water, the basic human needs met by equality and human rights for all. The things we all need to grow, to thrive. Equality. Worldwide equality. Worldwide human and civil rights. No more wars. No more billions of dollars hoarded away by greedy and unethical and morally questionable billionaires. And with less wars and less killing and less worry, we can all be less stressed and happier and more content in life. Just imagine how much we'll save on military expenditures, amongst other things, and where that money could better be spent. The issue of military expenditure for America isn't as stark as that faced by the former Soviet Union, but it needs to be addressed nonetheless. A safe world for everyone is achievable. A chance for all of us to live the kind of life we want to lead. A chance to find meaning and leave a legacy if we deem so. And this will call for a restructuring of wealth, corporations, society, culture, and government, including the judiciary and campaign finance in America, to name a few. And nearly every nation will need to change and grow to make all of this possible. This mandate requires all of us to accept and realize that our DNA is 99.9% the same, and that we're all related, all one race, one species. Therefore, we all deserve the same human and civil rights. None of us are better or worse than anyone else, not even the rich. No one deserves to have more than they can spend in several lifetimes, especially considering that some don't have enough to survive. We're all equal. Racism is therefore a lie and must be called out vehemently and often. There are many lies that people were taught. For example, Christopher Columbus is still being treated and venerated as a hero in some schools in the United States. And in some schools in America, they're teaching that slavery wasn't a bad thing. The South, has it rose again? Why do some people perpetuate these lies? Because if people actually woke up to the truth, if we took the red pill, we'd all realize that the richest of the rich have been hurting our rights, our freedom, and stealing our opportunities since Reagan, since Nixon, and since Goldwater before them. Lies to cover greed and theft and murder. They've stolen from everyone in the world, every day, in many ways. No wonder most of us are worse off in America than our parents were at our age. It's time the United States of America, the other superpowers, and every European nation who supported or benefited from either colonialism or slavery, the brutality and murder of millions of people on every continent through disease, neglect, abuse, taking some as slaves, stealing lands, and not treating others with the dignity and respect that we all deserve. All of this brutality started this most recent time with perpetuating a profitable mandate to convert the rest of the world to Christianity through conversion by any means necessary. Circa the Doctrine of Discovery, 1493. And the documents that it had subordinated, supplanted, and subsumed in scope to itself, such as the 1436 Romanus Pontifex, and the 1452 Roman Bull Dum Diversas, and the 1453 Bull also titled Romanus Pontifex, and the 1493 Inter Caetera, to name a few, a subjugation and an excuse for murder that followed the world globe. Documents and a doctrine of greed, murder, and division that has lived on throughout the contemporary world. When Chief Justice John Marshall used these documents as a precedent and acknowledgement as a state of fact in his 1823 Supreme Court decision against the First Peoples, and why we owe these tribes of the first native peoples of this continent their sovereignty and land back. This ruling in America in Johnson versus McIntosh. These evil documents, written hundreds of years before and signed by various popes, became the law of the land not only in America, but by future independent nations currently under the British realm and crown. A shared precedent of sin on our Western tradition of law, following other original sins like the Crusades, the Inquisition, the Renaissance, and the Age of Discovery it had spawned. Remember, the Renaissance brought forth this too, just as it had the Enlightenment and the Age of Reason to follow, all while embracing a new humanism for which all were created in God's image and all had been blessed with the strengths and gifts for the betterment of all, or at least to Christians. In this time of unique polarity, like today, the Renaissance saw both beauty and blood, the true tale of Western civilization. This was profitable for the parties who devised the system, but certainly not for all parties involved. And now we're talking about Rome, one of the greatest sins of the Roman Catholic Church, for they wrote and signed the document of discovery in 1493. The Roman Catholic Church, back in 1493, followed the example set by its predecessor, the ancient Roman Empire. For no power or group of powers committed such crimes against humanity: Holocaust, enslavement, murder, land grabs, and genocide since the Roman Empire. Pope Alexander VI sanctioned all this through church edicts known as bulls. Bulls. Is this the true legacy of the West? So yes, the Vatican, and later the Church of England, and all other churches, organizations, agencies, or individuals who profited by this second dark age of Europe, of Europa, of Terra, our home. For all these aforementioned must seek an earned and earnest forgiveness and start to make some gesture of reparations to the rest of the world for our continued crimes against you, crimes direct or indirect, intentional or no, or from mistreatment or from neglect. We must apologize, and we must all respect each other and recognize all our shared voices as equals. And together, I hope, I pray, that our voices will soon join yours in the new song, the new symphony of humanity, this awakening of equality, of hope, of universal solidarity. The United Nations isn't perfect. It could be more democratic and curb its worst excesses, but its value is beyond measure. It is perhaps the greatest generation's gift to humanity's future, and any voice who condemns it or its voice in the world should be listened to with caution. For we all have a voice, and all voices matter. We all deserve to be listened to and to be understood. That's the beauty of the premise of the United Nations. All people belong. We always have. We all deserve peace and prosperity and a comfortable and safe life, free from worry or want or fear. And we owe that to each other, to everyone, whoever we are, wherever we live. Our commonalities many, our differences few. Let us bring each other up and amplify the voices of solidarity, democracy, and equality, and freedom. Let all peoples and nations bond and bind themselves together, for surely no one is free until everyone is free. Let no one separate. A united, equal, and just world will begin to build in this, the new Renaissance spirit. This needn't be hyperbole. We can actually make this happen. As esteemed Italian physicist and writer Carlo Rovelli penned in his masterpiece article, the new global arms race will lead to catastrophe. The West can pursue it or choose peace. Written on 26 November 2023 and published in The Guardian. The world and the West can choose peace and act to achieve it. And like the calmer and more reasonable voices who put pen to paper in the 1914 Manifesto to the Europeans, we must all speak up as has our best leaders in the modern era have done to help achieve that peace. The choice incumbent on all. We can be the drafters of a better tomorrow. We can be the writers of our own future. We can fulfill the dream of humanity if we act upon it. Don't dream it. Be it. Let us awaken the new age upon us and live the Renaissance spirit. Take the quiz now to see if you're a Renaissance spirit. Thank you for watching. Take care, and God bless.